Hey, everybody. Welcome back to episode number 11 of the Two Chiefs, One Mic podcast. I'm Scott Hughes.
And I'm Mike Hawkins. And I know I screwed up last week. I told us it was episode 11. It was actually 10. So we are officially at episode 11 today.
I could make a joke right now about Michigan education, but I'm going to let that slide.
And today, I couldn't be more excited to have our guest today, a good friend and somebody in a neighboring department. And actually that both Scott and I know from NA Class 291, Deputy Chief Andrew Starzec from Brownstown Police Department. And today, I thought would be a good idea to get with him because he, in their department, has done an outstanding job under his lead of community engagement for a mid-size suburban agency. And we all know of the normal things that agencies do and try to do, but Andy has done some outstanding things, outside the box, creative ideas to get community engagement, community involvement. So we are happy and proud to welcome Deputy Chief Andrew Starzec to episode 11 of the podcast.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. Just a year ago, we were out in Virginia in the sweltering heat. So it's nice to be back in some air conditioning and hanging out this way, too.
Just so you know, since I am outnumbered with two Michigan folks to one Ohio folk here, I did bring my Ohio State Buckeyes cup to even the playing field. So just as a side note before we got too far into this.
Got it.
So Andrew, thanks. So you man, you've done a lot of stuff and that's in air quotes for those of you that aren't watching this. You've done a lot of stuff with regards to community engagement, and we all know on this podcast that, you know, the three of us represent the average size police department in America. So we don't have like an entire community engagement unit that just does this full time. We're all doing it, or we may have an officer to help us out here or there. The one thing though that I want to start with is kind of piggybacks off one of our recent podcasts, and that's the Lucas Foundation. So Chief Hawkins was telling me that you actually were involved with that. Why don't you let our listeners know, if they haven't listened to that Lucas Foundation podcast, kind of what that's all about?
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, January 9th, 2024, Lucas Sizemore was an Atlanta police officer and died by suicide. He was originally from the next town over, actually the town in between Mike and I, in Woodhaven. And through a couple phone calls, I got a phone call from Chief Sherbon of Atlanta Police Department. And I'm like, this is Atlanta, Georgia, right? Like the chief from Atlanta is not going to be calling me, but he was. He was extremely upset, but very heartfelt. And he said that they had another line of duty death in Atlanta, and they could not facilitate the honor guard for Lucas's funeral. And he asked us to help out with that funeral service. So from that point forward, for the next week, I was organizing with local departments, our honor guard, some other resources that we have, funeral home, etc., and the Sizemore family. Come to find out, Brian Sizemore, Lucas's dad, went to school with my sister. So, I mean, it immediately became a very close incident to us in downriver. We're south of Detroit, and it is very tight knit. If something happens, it impacts almost everybody here. So that hurt everyone, but we knew that it was a time to come together. So we organized the funeral services, the transport from the airport, all the honor guard, everything to go, viewing, etc. For the funeral day itself, the officers, the honor guard were able to make it into town. So that was nice. So we had an extra complement, but Chief Sherbon was there, Deputy Chief Morgan Freeman, all outstanding people. They're very, very, I cannot say enough good things about the Atlanta Police Department. And at one point, the guys were saying, hey, we're trying to look for some place to go after the funeral or after the viewing so we can kind of decompress while we're still in town. So I arranged a private room at a local restaurant here where we could all kind of share stories about Lucas and what the law enforcement community does together. And it was very, very nice. So during our conversations at that restaurant, I kind of thought, so I'm part of a polar plunging group. It's kind of strange, I recognize. So the typical polar plunge is you jump in the water, you jump back out. we've found, and there's a lot of research into it, that deliberate cold water exposure does a lot of positive things for your body. And so a group of friends and I go out into the Detroit River at least 4 times a week during the winter, and we'll sit in the freezing waters for up to 6 minutes when it's cold out. And this was January 10th, maybe, probably a little bit after that with the service and everything. So I said, hey guys, we have a group of officers and civilians that are coming together to do this very, very tough thing. And I'd like to invite you to come to it. And a couple of them thought I was absolutely nuts. I am. But a couple of them thought it was a great idea. So we got them. We have 4 officers that met us out at the river. And as I met up with those guys in the morning, Brian Sizemore came out too. And it could not have been a better morning for this. It was freezing cold. The river was literally freezing. We had to cut holes in the ice in order to get into the water. But the sun was coming up. It was beautiful. And it was a great decompression for us to have gone through this difficult scenario, and then to show that we can go through this cold water exposure, we can do hard things, and you come out on the other side better. So after that made a profound impact on Brian. And then a few weeks later, we held the first inaugural polar plunge for Lucas Sizemore, which then we've since had the second one too in February of this year. So I am certain it'll be an annual deal. And I know on the previous podcast that you guys talked about the 1,000-mile run that's coming up in September. Brownstown, we are directly involved in that. I'm the liaison for Michigan for that section of the run. So we've got lots more to do for the Lucas Foundation.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And two points to that. So I don't know if you saw the episode with Lucas. Brian made a point to say how great the chief of Atlanta was. And it was, you mentioned the same thing. I mean, he said this guy, bar none, was the best he's ever dealt with.
Yes.
Anything, I mean, what was it about him? What you mentioned him, what is it about this guy?
So, yeah, exactly right. So Atlanta Police Department, the city of Atlanta, is a gigantic metropolis. I can't imagine how large their training facility is, how large their headquarters is. And I ended up going down to Atlanta to teach at a conference last May or June of 2024. So after the funeral. And I had mentioned to Chief Shearbaum that I'd be coming down, and they literally rolled the red carpet out for me. I had an officer that was assigned to me, and, you know, I'm nobody. I don't deserve anything like that, but they absolutely appreciated the help that we gave to Atlanta and to the Sizemore family, and they made sure that they could repay that. So, you know, one thing when I landed in Atlanta, I called the guy and I said, hey, I just landed. I got to go grab my bag and then I'll be out, you know, outside the doors. He goes, Chief, I already have your bag. You're all set. I'm parked right by the tarmac. And he pulled me off the plane and we were on the way.
Wow.
I cannot say enough.
It is amazing. Like big cities.
Awesome.
I've been to a couple funerals for NYPD, and it's an experience. It's a somber time, but it's an experience you will not forget. And our luggage didn't make it, and we were there. We get off the plane. They knew we were cops. It came off. Are you on the list? They had the flight list. It was the same thing. Luggage. What do we do with our luggage? Just give me your phone number. I'll call you. We get a call. I think I was a sergeant at the time. Sergeant, it's on your bed in your hotel. I'm like, how did you even know where I was? And I got there, it's sitting on my bed. I mean, the resources that some of these big departments have, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But, and the second point, Scott, Andy had mentioned how tight knit it is around here. And I don't know where you're at, how it is. We interact with each other on a daily basis. You know, the law enforcement officers. Brownstown Honor Guard even did some of the honor guard for my uncle who had passed away. He was a former officer here, but you know, we share a lot of resources. So yeah,
that's great.
It's nice to see.
It's pretty similar down here. So, well, good. Well, Andrew, listen, we got you on here today to talk about community engagement, and thanks for sharing that. That's good information. You've done a lot of really neat programs, outside the box thinking. I think all of us have, you know, done the coffee with the cop or the cones with the cop and the National Night Out and the touch of trucks and, you know, those events. And I'm excited because I'm always wanting to know What am I missing? What can I be doing? We, like most departments, are very heavy in community engagement, but we're always looking for the next best thing. We're a suburban department. We have limited resources, limited funds. You've got this figured out. Walk us through it. How are you doing it? What are we missing? What can our viewers pick up? We're excited to hear what you got to say.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. So one of the things, you're absolutely right, the Coffee with a Cop, those kind of events, the folks that come out to that are already our supporters. We don't need to win them over. So what we need to do is to try and engage the people that may be on the fence or that actually dislike us strongly. Our environment down here in Michigan is actually very, very positive, but you're still going to have those outliers that dislike the police. What we've done is reached out to them. We've gone to them. So social media is big. We'll do that to try and contact as many people, but that only goes so far. We've got like 13,000 followers on our Facebook page. We have 33,000 residents, so you can take the demographics. Plus my mom is on there, so she's our top fan.
Is she gonna start following this podcast now? Because we need all the followers we can get.
Yeah,
and you can now watch it on YouTube, so you can see yourself as well, right? No, not just listen anymore.
Yeah,
and tell her to share it with all of her friends.
I will.
We need a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. So I actually partnered with a good buddy of mine. He and I worked undercover together back in the early 2000s. And he was running local police department's Facebook page. And he and I started interacting both on the side, but through our department Facebook pages. And we would kind of create, like the police and fire brotherhood, like you're fighting, but you're actually friends. And that's exactly what we did. So we would bounce different things back and forth off of one another, and we would play off of one another. And then we roped in another friend of ours from Woodhaven Police Department. And so it was the trio, and we were all feeding off of one another. So one of the great times that we ended up having, we all saw that there was a big snowstorm that was going to be coming in, and it was likely that they were going to shut down school for the day. Well, in the city of Woodhaven, they have a pretty decent sledding hill. And so this was all coordinated, but Jim and Allen Park and Ron and Woodhaven started messaging each other on their Facebook page. Hey, I challenge you to this sledding hill, et cetera, et cetera. And so then I posted up on our social media the picture of Pablo Escobar from Narcos when he's sitting on that bench. And I'm like, hey, we're Brownstown waiting to get invited to the party. And then that started to spool up. And I think Trenton got involved.
Yeah, we were in there too. Yep.
Yeah, we had 30 people, 30 departments come, the state police, we had some federal agencies, and it was a great opportunity. Thankfully, the snow did come. School got canceled. There was, I don't know, hundreds, if not 1,000 people there. And we turned it into a fundraising effort. So we're not just going out and having fun. We ended up raising over $10,000 that went to a charity that Woodhaven. Unfortunately, they won. They beat us. But
there is a dispute, just so you know, there's still a dispute here at our department.
Is that right?
We think they hosted. So
yeah.
I'm going to look at the video.
Yeah, Zimmers knows that hill like the back.
Oh God, the number of Michigan jokes I could make right now being an Ohio State guy. But I'm just going to let this.
That's why we're here. We're competitive.
I'm going to let this whole cheating thing go. And
God, I'll do you one better. I posted on our Facebook page. I went to the local home store and bought a bunch of silicone spray, and I said, "Is it cheating if it's for charity?" And man, it actually slowed me down. That was probably dead last, but yeah.
So Christmas Vacation is not accurate.
It was not accurate. That's exactly what I was going for.
Sorry, back to the cheating Michigan. Sorry.
Yeah. So that was a good example. We've done some other ones, but another thing that we've done, and we've partnered with Allen Park. So Jim is a great resource. He'd probably be a wonderful person to have on your podcast also. He's retired now, so he's teaching different things, but he came up with this idea and actually copyrighted it, trademarked it, and it's called Cop on the Block. And because we're friends and because we work together so often, he created this program, this idea that you already have your community engagement officer or the chief or different people have at least one contact in every subdivision, in every apartment complex, trailer park, etc. Reach out to that one person and ask them to host the police department on a particular night. And the idea is you go to the public and you find out what that specific community's problems are. And you actually listen to them. And the most important thing to follow up on that is to follow up on that. You have to listen to them and then you have to address their needs. Because if you just come in, you make this big fanfare, and then you post it on Facebook and then you never heard from again, they will lose all credibility. You will lose all credibility. And so that's one of the biggest things that we learned on that too. So that's been a lot of fun. I was kind of disappointed last year when we were all at the NA, our cop on the blocks kind of died out, but I'm rejuvenating that now that the weather's nice and we're going to start rocking and rolling here very soon. That's
Now, you guys have grills and everything, don't you? I've seen pictures of you guys grilling out with your badge stickers on them and everything. Is that part of the cop on the block, or is that something different?
I brought that out a couple times. Yeah. The high school. So again, probably 20 years ago, the high school metal shop built us a trailer grill. It's gigantic. It's probably the size of the desk that you're sitting in front of. And every graduation day for the seniors in high school, we cook hot dogs, hamburgers, and now we've gotten into vegetarian, whatever you call them, that we cook for the students. So, but we bring that out. We cook for the residents. We've had pizzas delivered. We do different things, but you go to the communities that need it the most. And one of the important lessons I found initially was we have kind of a rough trailer park in our town. The residents know us all by name almost, and it's one of the first places that we ensure our rookies learn inside and out. It's kind of difficult the way that it's laid out. It's not just straight streets. It's all kind of turns and everything. And so I purposely set up a cop on the block there, and they were our biggest supporters. It was fantastic. They all came out, and that was one of the ones where we had pizza. As a matter of fact, so I set up pizza, and then a resident was driving by. He goes, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" I says, "Well, we're coming out. We want to hear what you guys have to say." We worked with management to make sure that everyone in the park knew that we were going to be coming. And he goes, "That's awesome. It looks like you're running low on pizza." And he went up and grabbed probably $150 and more pizza and brought it out to us. He goes, "Here you go, guys. Thanks for doing what you're doing." It was awesome. It's been a huge success for that.
So how do you go ahead, Scott?
No, I was just going to say, so, other than the cop on the block, you did something with autism.
Yeah.
And forgive me, I don't remember exactly what Chief Hawkins told me before the podcast started.
Yeah.
Autism, it's ironic. We just had a case yesterday with a missing autistic individual, nonverbal, and we had to use our drone, and we eventually found him. But autism is definitely something that has gotten the attention of law enforcement over the years. Tell us if you don't mind, what was it that you did with the autism? Because I know it was very successful, and I think maybe our listeners might want to know more about it.
Yeah, it really was successful. There's a local nonprofit called Mimi's Mission, and it is a group that supports autistic people in our community, but it also supports the family members in the community. Because if you have a loved one that's diagnosed with autism, it may be the first interaction that you have with that whole field. There's going to be IEPs. There's going to be medical terminology that you've never heard of. There's going to be life-changing things that are going to be coming up in your life, and you need resources. And there's just not a lot of resources out there for the one-on-one connection. So with Mimi's Mission, they created a monthly gathering where the parents and the children would come together, and the children would go off into a separate room and they'd play amongst peers of their own, because autistic people sometimes have a difficult time making friends. There's sometimes not included in all the groups. All right. And so we worked, well, I say we, because I eventually got on their board, but they solicited some high school seniors that would kind of chaperone the students and make sure that they were all safe and not running out or anything. And then in a separate room, all the parents would get together and they would share stories, especially some of the more seasoned people that have gone through this scenario themselves for longer. They would all share stories. Hey, this is what we found that worked. This didn't necessarily work, but maybe it would work for your child, because, you know, the autism spectrum is just as wide. And it's not just a left to right spectrum. It's up, down, diagonal. There's some that are verbal, some nonverbal, some sensory overload. There's so much to it. And so it's a lot. So to your point, a lot of times autistic people will run away, and MIMIs recognized that law enforcement and firefighters coming up in uniform would be likely the first to find that autistic child. We wanted to make sure that the children in our community knew that people in uniform, like police and fire, were friendly people. So we were invited to a Christmas dinner that they had, and I brought 4 or 5 police officers there, all in full uniform, and started interacting with all the children. And I've now become friends with almost every single one of them. They're fantastic. I get Christmas cards and the whole 9 yards. But I recognized almost immediately, I was completely overwhelmed when I first walked into that room. I didn't have any experience with autistic people. I didn't really know what it was. And I knew if I was experiencing that many, many of my coworkers were going to be feeling that way too. And I don't want the first opportunity of dealing with an autistic person to be in the field. So we expanded this program and began teaching what autism is to public safety entities, police and fire. When we went all over downriver, I think our final, we're still doing it, we're available to do it, but we did approximately 30 to 35 police and fire agencies, including the Detroit Fire Department too. We partnered with the Detroit Pistons and used their training facility to do some training down there. We bring the families in and show them, you know, how difficult it can be to deal with that, and then give them obviously ways to cope with that, ways to understand, and how to best facilitate a safe return or a safe ending to every incident. So that's obviously what we want at the end of the day. And I hope that young man that was running away was found safely. So
Yeah, he was. Thank you.
Good.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think your organization also provided bags, right,
Yes.
to police departments and cars, so there was something to help that transition.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, they're called 911 ready bags, and they come with a weighted blanket, noise reducing headphones. There's a snack, a water bottle, and then a couple of fidgets that would go in there. And the fidgets were specifically chosen for durability, but also to hit as many people. So some people think like the spinners might be something that would be exciting. Sometimes when autistic people see that, they see that spinning and they'll see that going faster and faster, and it will actually amp them up. So we found that using some stretchy bands, I wish I had them, but there's also like a chewing toy that looks like a Lego block. And then there's a little like a mochi. My daughter's got like 1,000 of them, but they're just little pushing things. And we found that those things will typically reduce the stress of the autistic person in almost all scenarios. It's never foolproof. But what was awesome was Brownstown was the first agency to deploy those bags. We had them in every single police and fire apparatus in the township. And shortly after doing that, we had a domestic violence issue where a young female was engaged in an incident, we'll say, with her mom. A lot of scenarios prior to these bags, we may have taken her to the hospital. We may have had to arrest her. You know, in this scenario, our sergeant that was on scene, he ended up bringing out this bag, and the blanket didn't work. The headphones didn't work, but she found one of those stretching toys. And by manipulating that, it helped reduce her anxiety. She came down to a level where she was able to manage. And she never knew that toy existed. And now I've reached back out to the family. We followed up with them, and they've really never had a problem since. And I'm not saying that this is the be all end all, but it worked in that scenario, and it's continued to work for that family. There's been hundreds of positive outcomes from these bags, and it's been great.
Who funded the items that were in the bag?
Local nonprofits or philanthropic people. There's a family in the township that's quite affluent, and they found out about it. She's the the matriarch is friends with Lisa, who's in charge of Mimi's. And when she found out what was happening, she says, I want one in every car in Brownstown. And she made it happen. And they're relatively inexpensive. The cost is $50 for this bag with all this stuff in it. And some agencies will try and sell them for up to $200 now that they're kind of becoming more and more popular. But no one's looking to make money. We're trying to get them out in the public as much as possible.
Yeah, and your idea morphed into the neighboring agencies. We have one in every car, so it's not just Brownstown. Your idea there sparked that to other agencies as well.
Yeah, it sure did. After we deployed these bags and then started to push it out on social media platforms, Trenton jumped on board, other cities jumped on board. The Michigan State Police created their own bags, which is very, very similar to ours, and pushed them out to the entire state. So it was great. We actually spoke to them. We were trying to get, training in with the MSP. It would be awesome to do that. And they created their own program. That's fine. I understand it's the MSP, but we're happy to get that resource out there so it can help everybody in the state. We've had contacts across the United States. There was one point where we were going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, San Diego, California, and there was a place in Texas too. And for various different reasons, it just wasn't feasible to do that, to travel across the country for this. But we've given those agencies resources and guided them in certain directions that we thought was a good idea. So yeah, it's been great.
So talk about another thing that you've done with people from the autism community or even special needs with the pageant that you've done recently.
Yeah. There is a resale shop in Brownstown here that partners up with a organization called Miss Amazing. And it's a nationwide program, but the Michigan chapter of it hosts a beauty pageant every year. I believe it's in May. So in March, they asked us to partner with them at the resale shop while the girls were selecting their dresses. And so as they got on their dresses, they walked down this red carpet, took some photos in front of this big mirror. The girls were feeling very confident in themselves, and they had nice looking guys in police uniforms to escort them down the walkway. Fast forward to the actual competition, which is held up in Novi. They asked us to come all the way up to Novi and to help them out. So it was great. So we've done that for 2 years in a row now. And the young ladies are so excited. And one story I'll quickly tell. This year, my partner and I were standing there and we're kind of talking to a couple different people. And a lady comes up. She says, hey, my sister's really afraid of police officers. Do you mind can you guys go talk to her? Well, absolutely, we can. So we go over there and we started talking to her, and come to find out she loves dogs, and she, maybe kind of sort of interested in law enforcement. And we ended up building a great rapport with this young lady. And she insisted that I be the guy that escorted her on the stage. And then afterward, we exchanged contact information, and we sent her, the players cards for our canine dog. We set up an opportunity for her to come and hang out with our canine Bane. I sent her challenge coins. I mean, everything. She's just a wonderful young lady. She won her section, and she's going to nationals here, I think, in a week or two. So
I heard the rumor that she won was because of the gentleman that escorted her down. I don't know if that's true or not.
We did have the most applause. That's all I can say.
I mean, with hair like that, how can you not?
I tell you what, Scott, it's an amazing event. I got to participate 2 years ago. I missed it last year, and it was just an amazing event.
Yeah.
So some other things that you've done, Faith in Blue. Mm-hmm. And a lot of agencies do Faith in Blue. And we did something where we went to a church and, we put the information out to the churches, but you took it and just blew it out of the water here. Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and where that took you?
Sure. Yeah. So my chaplains and I, when this first came out, so the way that I found out about it was that this Wisconsin Association of Chiefs of Police challenged the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police to a contest of how many agencies could they get to do the Faith in Blue. So we took that very, very seriously and wanted to obviously beat Wisconsin as best we could. So what we did was actually a chaplain of mine. It was not my idea. So we kind of worked together, but we invited every single religious organization in the township to come together. And we chose the community center to do that, to have it as a neutral ground. Now, earlier I talked about going out into the community because you want to go to them and make it easier on them. They feel more comfortable when you go to them. However, I wanted to bring everyone together. In the Faith in Blue idea, it's not a recruiting thing. It's not, asking the police officers to convert to any certain religion or anything like that. But what we have in Brownstown is a very unique situation. We have a huge Pakistani population, and half are Muslim and half are Sikhs. And so we brought all of them together, plus a bunch of Christian organizations, into our community center. And what we did, and this was definitely our chaplain's idea, he said, nothing brings people together like food. Why don't we make this a glorified potluck? And glorified was a very intentional word because this was a Faith in Blue thing. And all we asked was that someone, if you're going to come, to bring a small dish to pass, whether it represents your culture, your religion, or anything like that. And it was a huge, huge success. And so there, in every scenario that you have, you're going to have some learning parts to it too, right? You're going to look foolish sometimes. So the grill that Mike was talking about, I brought this grill over there, and I know that Muslim people need to eat halal food. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna knock this out of the park. I bought a ton of halal chicken. I fired it up the grill. I cooked it all, and I brought it out. And they said, "Oh, we can't eat that. It was cooked on a regular grill." I'm like, "Oh man!" But it was embarrassing. It was terribly embarrassing. But they said, "We sincerely appreciate the gesture," and they bought us a grill. So then every year after that, we continue to do this every year. That we cook the halal chicken on this special grill that's only used for this event or any other event that we have that we cook halal food. So it was great. But eventually, that very first year, we pushed it pretty hard on our social media platforms, and Movement Forward, which is the actual nonprofit that pushed out Faith in Blue, they highlighted us as the spotlight event of the year for the entire nation. It was huge.
That's what I was going to say, across the country, right? Yes, it wasn't just in Michigan. Yeah, absolutely.
No, it was awesome. Extremely humbling. I certainly never expected that. The next year was even better. We pushed it out, got more and more people involved, and I don't think they really did the spotlight the second year. I think it was in 23, maybe 22, something like that. But when they put up their reel on Movement Forward's Instagram page, it was the city of New York and Brownstown Township. So wow. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Andrew, like you've done, and there's a lot more stuff that you've done, and maybe we'll list everything you've done like in the show notes, the different programs you have, because clearly you're into community engagement. You've got this thing figured out, and the programs that you've mentioned, in the 30 minutes or so that we've been here are above and beyond what most folks are doing. And I'm confident that people are going to want more information. So we'll make sure you get your contact information out there too. But, not to put you on the spot, but why? Why are these programs so important? Why not just do the basics, check the box? We're doing community engagement. Why take it one step further in your community? Why are you so passionate about this?
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. First, to me, good enough is not good enough. I'm not okay with just checking boxes. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And we're going to do it really well to the best of my ability, but we're going to do it really well. We're going to knock it out of the park. The other reason is, I don't want to call it selfish, but the whole reason that we got into law enforcement is because we want to help the people that we're serving. If you're not legitimately talking to the people that you're serving in a non-confrontational way, A, they're not going to trust you, and B, they're not going to tell you what their problems are unless they're like legitimately complaining. And you've already lost it at that point. So we want to meet our residents and those that visit Brownstown on their own terms, to talk to them. I think your guys' podcast is outstanding. And yes, we're friends. And so I listen to it initially because we're friends. I want to check it out. But the way that you guys talk back and forth, this is Scott and Mike talking. This is not necessarily chief versus chief. It's Scott and Mike talking, and now Andy talking. And that's the direction that I push all of our efforts into. I just want to talk to them like normal people. And that's been really advantageous for us.
So let me ask you, so you said advantageous. I was going to say ROI, right? Return on investment.
Yeah.
Tell me, if you can, tell everybody who's listening or watching this, like, how do you track the success?
Yeah.
Right?
Tracking is difficult because it's going to be,
maybe tracking's the wrong word. Like,
No,
But
I
you
know.
said follow up earlier.
Yeah,
so how do you
follow-up,
know
yeah.
with that follow up that what you're doing is successful?
yeah.
I've had actually questions about tracking because some of the accreditation standards want you to track what you're doing. It's very, very difficult. It's kind of like crime preventions. You never know what crimes you've stopped. And this is kind of the same thing. But I can tell you two things that we've had that have been very beneficial. The first one was our mosque that's in Brownstown. For years and years, they had reached out during Ramadan for assistance with traffic because as they do their prayers throughout the day, they're all dismissing, and traffic is an absolute nightmare for them. And for years, their requests for traffic assistance fell on deaf ears. And then they called when I happened to get into this role. Well, I was sergeant at the time, but I was doing the community engagement aspect of it. They called and I said, well, absolutely, we'll be out there. And I had 3 cars out there the first day. And the imam and the main president of the mosque said, we were going to give up on you. This was going to be our last chance of reaching out to you guys. And had you not responded, we just would have cut you off, and that would have been the end of it. Unfortunately, they did give us that chance, and we've had an unbelievable relationship with them ever since. We make sure that they're taken care of all the time. Anytime that there's threats to anybody of, the Islamic faith or anything like that, we're making sure that we have cars driving through the lot. They have my cell phone. I've been invited to family dinners at their house. My wife, daughter, and I went to an event. The president, his name is Shaquille, an outstanding guy. His son was 9 years old and memorized the entire Quran. And so they had a huge party. Like, think of this as a quinceañera, bar mitzvah in christening on steroids. And they invited us to this thing. It was the wildest and strangest thing I've ever been to, but it was very, very cool. The other thing that I can really point to is, for years, Brownstown just had a neutral opinion in the community. No one necessarily went out of their way, but they didn't really support us necessarily. Well, after a few years, and I want to be careful to say that this was not a plan. This was not we're not going to engage the community to try and get something later on. But through different scenarios, we ended up asking for a millage increase in 2022. And we went to the public, and these were 2 separate things. So we had our cop on the blocks, we had all these events, and then we also had this thing on the side of asking, or basically telling about what the millage would be and what we do with that extra funding. And in a time where everyone was really feeling the pinch in the pocketbook and gas prices were through the roof, our millage passed 70% in favor. Nice. And so it was huge. And since then, we've seen other agencies in our area, and Mike knows them well, that had their millages fail. And no knock on them. It's just that we were addressing the problems that our residents were feeling, and they knew that. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier of making sure that you follow up on the promises that you make during these events.
Well, trust, I say this in leadership training, trust is the backbone of all relationships, sure. Right? So once the community trusts you and they know that you're doing things for the right reasons, then you're going to make a lot more progress with them. So kudos to you.
So Andy, for any listeners that may be suburban size, so why don't you tell them about the size of Brownstown in your role? Is it just you? Do you have a few people? Is it, because I know what it is here, and you can always rely on a few people, but is there a budget that you guys have, or how do you handle some of these events? And I know you talked about some of the donors, but tell us who's involved.
So Brownstown is, like I said, south of Detroit. We're split up into 3 different sections, which is kind of unique because we're a township. We're 24 square miles of land and 8 square miles of water that goes out into the Detroit River. And we're surrounded by 17 other communities. It's difficult to really raise funding for that with our township the way that it is. We can't have recurring balances. We're talking about different ways of funding this, but basically it's been a very small line item on our budget. But most of the things that I'm talking about don't cost a lot of money. It's a legitimate care and concern for people, and that will return on your investment tenfold. So, some of the things that we've done have really, really helped us.
Most of it is you and then volunteers from the department. So letting listeners know there's not a community engagement division or group. It's your role because it has to be your role. And who would like to help, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And that's how most of our agencies have to handle these things.
Yeah. Thanks for getting me back on that. Yeah. So we have 38, 39, 40 sworn officers, depending on our, where we're at, but that's about what we're budgeted for. And when I first got into this, I was the afternoon detective sergeant, and I volunteered, and be careful what you volunteer for because you're going to get it. And I jumped on board, but it's been really helpful because even as I promoted to detective lieutenant and now I'm deputy chief, I still maintain that role. And I taught at the Eastern Michigan University Staff and Command. Mike actually hooked me up with that too. You're like my agent here. but I went through this entire thing and I talked about what we talked about earlier, but many, many other things that we've done. And one guy raised his hand at the end. He's like, "Man, how many people are on your team?" And I'm like, "You're looking at it. That's it." And you're right. When we did Miss Amazing, Mike, I reached out to every police agency downriver to try and get people together. And thankfully you came. And I think one or two of your other Trenton officers came. We had a couple people from Southgate that came out. And I know not everyone knows where those agencies are, but they're kind of spread out. And we all came together. We had some others from Brownstown, but
it is tough. And you see the same people doing it over and over, and you can rely on them. But it's a different mentality, different mindset to be involved in that community engagement. So let me ask you this, because we're coming up on about 45 minutes here, and we like to keep them between 40 to 50 minutes. You have been to Staff and Command. You teach at Staff and Command. You've been to the FBI National Academy and met two outstanding people, and you're now on their podcast, right?
One you like better than the other.
You even dispatch for one of the people on here, right? You run their dispatch center. But
change your love from Ohio.
What is next? What do you see on the horizon? What is Brownstown going to do? Because I know we were trying to talk about it before. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And we in Trenton, we see some of the things you do, and we try and emulate those, and not even on the same scale because we see them successful. What do we see Brownstown coming up with next, or you coming up with next to engage with people in the community?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm racking my brain at. One other thing that I try to engage as many people as possible and build that core group of people that will help me. You guys been around a long time. You know that old salty dog that really just doesn't even want to be here and, will kind of be rough and gruff and everything like that. Well, we had one of those guys here, and he loves fishing. And so there was an event where we hooked up with the local Rotary chapter that takes a bunch of special needs kids out fishing. And I said, "Hey, Mike, you got to come with us. We need your help." And he said it was the greatest experience that he's ever had. And he ended up hooking up with this young man named Jaden, and they have become best of friends. Mike, we see them every once in a while, and Mike bought him a fishing shirt, like one of those like sun shirts and everything like that. And Jaden gave him a shirt. So, it's finding new ways to engage the people like that. But to your question, Mike, it's very serious. I'm working on some ideas to make this bigger and better. I did teach in Atlanta at a conference. I taught a similar program down in Florida, and I keep talking to my chief, and I said, "Hey, are you okay with this?" And he says, "You're putting Brownstown on the map. You are building Brownstown up so that people across the nation are hearing about the great things that we're doing. So by all means, do it." And I appreciate his support.
That's great.
That. Yeah, it's really good. So I think that the future is unknown exactly where we're going to go, but I expect some great things coming up in the near future.
Well, I tell you what, we appreciate it. Scott had mentioned earlier, we'll put your contact info on here. You guys have done some outstanding things, and you're not just keeping them there. You're sharing them with other agencies, other
That's the
people. So
key.
it grows and grows and grows. So we appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk more about it. But Scott, why don't you finish it up and have anything else?
Well, I just, thanks for sharing, what you're doing. And I know you're doing a lot more, and, it's hard to capture everything you're doing in a short amount of time. But the key here, and, one of the reasons why Mike and I even started this podcast is to share ideas on what folks are doing. And, some people may be doing, a lot. Others are trying to figure out ways to get started. But you definitely put some ideas out there, some outside the box stuff. And again, I want to make sure that when we publish this podcast that we get your contact information out there, because I know folks are going to have questions. So expect your email inbox to be inundated with requests. But I think that's how we make the profession better, right? We share what folks are doing. We don't just live in our own little silos, because if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect a different result, we all know that's called insanity. And that doesn't get the profession where we need to go. So kudos to you. Kudos to your agency for doing what you're doing. Yes, you just heard an Ohio State fan say kudos to what you're doing in Michigan.
Whoa.
And I know.
The definition of insanity is keep playing Michigan the same way and keep getting the same result. I was going to jump in, but I let it go. Scott, what is that bright green thing over your shoulder here?
Good call, dude. Check this out. So this is called lifesafetylights.com. And forget flares as you know them. These bad boys are to replace flares. You charge them with like a USB. They come in different colors. I don't know if you can see the colors, but this is flashing red and blue. And it's got different flash patterns. It'll go steady. It'll go flash. It's got a built-in flashlight at the end that you can activate. They are super bright, as you can tell.
I can see it off your head. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that awesome? Look at that. But hey, check this out. It's got a magnet on the bottom. So you can, if a car is disabled, you can put this on top of the car. There you go. Now it's steady. Well,
there you go.
But anyhow, it's to replace flares as we know them. So
there's nothing worse than directing traffic. I always directed traffic with flares and come with burn holes in my pants.
Sure.
Well, people can't see them if it rains and stuff. It's like, you can't see them. And and then they also got this little thing here. You clip this on to on your shoulder, or you clip it on your back or something, so you can be seen while you're out walking around. And the cool thing about these is that they can customize the colors. So this one's blue and red. They got the other one back there is yellow and white. So anyhow, lifesafetylights.com is the website. Lifesafetylights.com. Pretty cool stuff. And now I can't turn them off, so they're just going to stay flashing.
Like a bath.
Sorry. Yeah. Hey, there you go. Yeah. Andy, man, thanks for coming on. Great information. Kudos again to what you guys are doing up there. Phenomenal job. It's all about community engagement and getting buy-in from the community. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And you guys are doing it great up there. So Mike, take us home.
Oh man. I tell you what, I try and take pride in our agency on doing things first and doing things best. But I tell you today, the episode, when we talked about community engagement, there was nobody else that I would have reached out to other than Andy. And I know he's supposed to be his agent, but it's because I really believe in promoting people that do a great job. And I think I do a good job, but when I see people do a better job than me, I like to champion them. And Andy does a phenomenal job. So
I appreciate
with community engagement,
coming from you, Mike, I really do. I appreciate that.
Well, you do. And community engagement is number one right now. And like Scott said, the trust for the community. So I would just encourage people to reach out to Andy if they have any questions. Andy, where are you going to be next? Are you speaking, teaching anywhere? Or are you going to be at FEI conference? Where are you going to be?
Going to Maryland, I think in August, teaching out there. I think that's it right now that's on the books. But summer's kind of hard for training, but I imagine more things come up in the fall.
We got to get you around here and get some of these community ones and in the PIO classes, because not only that, and then we didn't even get into it today. Maybe it's another podcast down the road, but communication with the media and everybody else. And I know you do an outstanding job there, and that's one of your things. So appreciate you coming on, and we will be back probably next week with episode 12. And if you'd like to be a guest, reach out to the podcast, reach out to the email that's on the screen, and we'd love to have you. So thank you, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.